Good evening. My name is Dan Ebner, and I'm a professor here at St. Ambrose University, and I'd like to welcome you to this Pacem and Terris Award celebration for 2023. We're really excited that we're taking, yes, thanks. We're kind of taking the Pacem and Terris Award to another level tonight, where we're going to really attribute and celebrate the interfaith nature of what Pope John the 23rd wrote in his papal encyclical 60 years ago, right? 60 years ago, 1963, Pacem and Terris, peace on earth. My very first Pacem and Terris celebration was a life changer for me. I attended the 1972 celebration with Dorothy Day when I was a sophomore here at St. Ambrose. And some of my friends talked me into going and hearing this woman who I didn't even know, and it changed my life because later I read everything I could get my hands on that Dorothy Day had ever written. I joined a Catholic worker community in Dubuque, and Dorothy Day probably has had more influence on me than any writer that's not named Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Okay? And another one of my most memorable Pacem and Terris recipients is Hildegard Gossmeyer, who received the award in 2009. That particular award celebration offered me the opportunity to travel to Vienna, Austria, to prepare Hildegard for coming to Davenport. We had been trying for about 30 years to get Hildegard to come to Davenport to receive this award, and she was prioritizing other countries because Hildegard had traveled to like 95 countries around the world doing nonviolence training, okay? This woman is amazing. I know a lot of you probably don't know who Hildegard Gossmeyer is, but Hildegard was also very closely related to another Pacem and Terris recipient, and that was Eileen Egan, okay? Eileen received the award in, I think it was 1989, and Eileen was best of friends with both Hildegard and with Dorothy Day, all right? So they had this sisterhood, that's kind of our theme for tonight, a sisterhood that was between the three of these Catholic women, okay? Eileen was working for Catholic Relief Services at the time, and she's the person who really introduced Saint Mother Teresa to a world stage and accompanied Mother Teresa to Davenport when Mother Teresa received the award. And so we have these four Catholic women, okay? A sisterhood of sorts, right? Who received this award, and it's part of our whole tradition that we have these four women, right? So together, Dorothy, Eileen, Hildegard, and Mother Teresa, all four women, sisters, strong advocates of a radical sense of hospitality, justice, and peace. All four women, sisters, living out the message of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, and the encyclical Pacem and Terris. They were bonded together as sisters in many ways, and one thing that united all four of these Catholic women was their undying love for the Eucharist, which united them as sisters in their own Catholic tradition. Now tonight, we take the Pacem and Terris Award to, I think, another level in a way, where we're going to recognize another sisterhood, an interfaith sisterhood, sisters of another tradition. I'm excited to see the award become more interfaith, and as we move our attention away from these other four sisters that I mentioned earlier, we think about the fact that these four sisters that we're recognizing tonight, two Jewish, two Muslim, two nationally known, two locally known, all four women sisters united in this same spirit that Pope John the 23rd wrote about in the original encyclical, which, by the way, was started with he talked about how he was writing this message not for Catholics, but for all people of goodwill. And so I think it's very consistent for us now to begin to become more interfaith as we recognize these four women tonight who are going to receive the Pacem and Terris Award. So let me ask Dr. Amy Novak to please come to the podium for a welcome to St. Ambrose. Amy?
Thank you, Dan, and thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It is indeed our pleasure to host this event, and it is also emblematic of who we are as a university, that we celebrate bridge builders. We celebrate people whose work is emblematic both of our Catholic tradition, but also just of our faith, that across all religions, we can unite together around common themes, around common understanding. And so interfaith dialogue and interfaith richness is something that has been at the heart of an Ambrosian education. We're privileged to partner with the Pacem and Terris Committee in hosting tonight's event, and grateful for that committee and the work that it models in bringing together people across the Quad City community and coming together to lift up our award recipients tonight. Our values here at St. Ambrose highlight community, education for social justice, service, and the pursuit of peace. And these values, I can assure you, are alive and well in the recipients of tonight's award. We are honored and privileged to be able to recognize them and to welcome their families to our campus. And may we all just be inspired by their story and their work. I know this morning as they were greeting our students, and then I had a privilege of talking with several of them as I walked in tonight, they were radiating a sense of confidence that I think you instilled in already the storytelling that you shared this morning. So if all of us can leave with a greater lift in our step, a sense of confidence that even among the challenges and the polarization of our environment, that we can find places to connect with one another, to connect around common themes that we all want to honor, that this work needs to continue. And so thank you for inspiring us, and welcome to our university.
Thanks, Amy. And for our opening prayer, Rabbi Linda Bergenthal, and she is the rabbi of both Temple Emmanuel in Davenport, as well as the Congregation Beth Israel. Rabbi Linda.
Thank you. Most holy source of creation, we thank you for creating humanity in your divine image and also endlessly diverse. We rejoice in the opportunity to be together with people of diverse backgrounds. We especially appreciate the gift of gender diversity and the unique ways women bring love and understanding to the world, a gift we celebrate tonight. Sacred wellspring of wisdom, we thank you for making your love and ethical teachings available to us in diverse ways so that every person has the opportunity to find a path to you with integrity. We rejoice in coming together with people of diverse faiths with special gratitude for the ability of Muslim and Jewish women to learn from each other to the benefit of all. Divine font of redemption, thank you for making us partners. We are thankful that working together to repair the world brings out the best in us and creates bonds between us that strengthen us all. The only joy deeper than that of bringing healing and repair, compassion and justice to our broken world is the joy of doing so with people who expand our understanding even as we work together. Holy One of blessing, bless us this evening with the ability to learn deeply from one another and to truly rejoice. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Linda. And now I'd like to ask Deacon Kent Ferris from the Diocese of Davenport to join us and provide us with some information about the first award that we will give this evening.
The One Among Us Award was given first a few years ago. In our midst at that time was a colleague and friend who had given her life to local expressions of peace and justice. In one instance, promoting a safe haven law for newborns. In another, helping see that a law was passed so that minors being trafficked wouldn't be charged with prostitution. Since then, we have posthumously honored a colleague and friend who led refugee resettlement efforts in the QC, and also friends who saw to the needs of immigrant neighbors following an ICE workplace raid. This year we honor not merely one among us, but the ones among us. 2 women leaders in their Jewish and Muslim faith communities, leaders in the greater community, who, by way of introducing the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom to the Quad Cities, model for all the gifts of encounter and dialogue. Cantor Gail Karp has given much to worship and to our community. Gail and Henry Karp being her husband, saw that there was great need for programs for children with autism and support for the parents of the children. Gail not only initiated new program for both children and parents, but went on to found the Scott County Community Advocacy Network of Disability Organizations, also known as CAN DO. This in turn led to an appointment on the governor's task force on autism. Amongst the many involvements are her seat at the table by way of the Inclusiveness Task Force with the United Way of the Quad Cities and the Quad Cities Mayor's Roundtable for Racial Equity and Diversity. Gail is also a leader in fundraising and PR relations, as well as being a certified mediator through the Iowa Peace Initiative. And as I have mentioned, worship, to begin with. Upon retirement, Rabbi Henry and Cantor Gail concluded a combined 62 years of ministry. Lisa Killinger is a professor and past director of diagnosis and radiology at Palmer College of Chiropractic. She was the first chiropractor ever hired by the U.S. government when she served as a consultant to the Bureau of Health Professions to develop its chiropractic program. Lisa has authored 9 book chapters and over 75 papers in professional journals and has given over 300 presentations at scientific and educational conferences around the world. She was a 2018 Athena Award honoree, 2009 American Chiropractic Association Academician of the Year. She was a multi-time Faculty of the Year winner and was also the most recent St. Ambrose University graduate commencement speaker for her many years of contribution to our community. She is a leader in her mosque, serving 6 years as its president, where she was the first woman, first convert, and first non-immigrant to lead the community. Lisa has also been a longtime member of our Pacem and Terris Award Committee, started the annual Women's Interfaith Dialogue and Bridges of Faith, and also, along with Gail, co-founded the local chapter of the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom. Sometimes at events like this, we place peace and justice champions on a pedestal. We celebrate their accomplishments and walk away thinking, but I could never do that. We're honoring Gail and Lisa for taking an inspired idea, the global Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom movement, and making it into a reality here in the QC by way of their local chapter. We are better for it. And now to present the one among us, or in this case, the ones among us, is Bishop Thomas Zinkula.
So I'm going to read what is on these awards, what's written there. The 2023 One Among Us Justice Award is presented to Lisa Killinger and Gail Karp by Bishop Thomas R. Zinkula of the Diocese of Davenport and the Pacem and Terris Coalition of the Quad Cities in light of their commitment to peace and justice. For their deep faith from within their faith tradition, for their love of neighbor in the greater community, for their willingness to, in turn, to create a local interfaith dialogue chapter, and for that chapter to now expand beyond our community to the greater global community. Lisa and Gail model how to care for the least among us by being one among us, given on this 13th day of September in Davenport, Iowa.
Now you're going to make us both cry. Gail so kindly said, I'm going to be quiet and you speak. Maybe I have a bigger mouth, I don't know. On behalf of my Jewish sister Gail and I were so very honored to accept this award, the ones among us. And I like that it's plural. When we worked together to form the local Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom, we weren't sure how it would go, not at all. But now, over 5 years later, both of us consider this a blessing and a pleasure. The friendships that we have grown and nourished in our sisterhood run deep. We also want to say that any and all of you can engage in interfaith peacemaking. It may be that you simply invite a Muslim or a Jew or somebody with any faith different than your own out to dinner or out to lunch or over to your house and break bread together. It might be that you go to a Jewish holiday event or a Muslim holiday event, or again, anyone with a faith different than yours, and you enjoy that person's company and you get to know them. It's simple and it's fun and it's enriching. In fact, it's the best way to find happiness in troubled times. We hope you will choose this way in your own way and experience the peace it builds to do so. We wanted to point out that several members of our Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom chapter are here in our local community. Could you please turn around and wave to the people that are here?
So congratulations, Lisa and Gail. Wow, what fun. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for your presence, and Henry too, right? So Katie Kiley has been working the last couple of years to put together a website on Parchment Terrace and the history of all of our award recipients over the years. She's been asking lots of us to write essays, to put it up on the website, and she's here tonight to present something about the history of this award. So come on, Katie. I can't think of anybody better to do this.
Thank you, Dan, and I was kind of hoping this would hold itself, but we'll see.
Oh, it can.
Can it?
Yeah, here we go.
That would be great. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. As Dan has said, I'm Katie Kiley, and I've been asked to present...
You need to get a little closer to it.
That's pretty
You want me to hold it?
No, it's...
Sure. There you go. Here, we'll just do this together.
Okay. Can you hear? Is that too loud? Okay. I've been asked to present a brief history of the Parchment Terrace Peace and Freedom Award, something Father Marvin Moddett, a founding member, did for years. The story begins in 1963 when Pope John XXIII published his Parchment Terrace encyclical, addressing not only Catholics, but as Dan pointed out, all people of goodwill. This encyclical electrified Catholics around the world. Among those inspired were members of the local Catholic Interracial Council, community leaders such as Charles Toney and Bill Cribbs, Sister Roberta, and St. Ambrose philosophy professor and chaplain, Father Bill Dawson, our very own digger. But it was St. Ambrose's history professor, Father Jack Smith, who exclaimed during a meeting, "We should have an award based on this." And it was Father Marvin Moddett who enthusiastically acted upon and realized Jack Smith's vision with unparalleled energy and focus. Thus was born the Parchment Terrace. Yeah, you can't?
There we go.
Okay. Thus was born the Parchment Terrace Peace and Freedom Award, which is presented to an individual or individuals who have demonstrated their passionate commitment to peace and justice through nonviolent action and for their promotion and teaching of nonviolence. The first to receive the Parchment Terrace Peace and Freedom Award was John F. Kennedy, posthumously in 1964. From then on, the candidates had to be living and were expected to travel to Davenport to accept the award. JFK was the first U.S. president to call racism a moral issue. John Howard Griffin, who wrote Black Like Me in response to racism, was the second 1964 Pacem and Terris recipient. The following year, in 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the third Pacem and Terris Award recipient. And as I promised last year, I'm not going to go through the whole list. In his notes regarding Dr. King, Father Mottet wrote, "We'd been present and marched with King and witnessed his I Have a Dream speech. How do we get King to Davenport?" Father Mottet, no shrinking violet, called the president of the National Office of the Catholic Interracial Council in D.C. and told him he, that is King, he owes me a favor. I delivered all those nuns and priests to Selma to march with him. Well, but this was April of 1965. There was a major flood that spring, the worst in Quad City history, which explains the midnight call to Father Mottet from Dr. King, who had heard about the flood on the national news. King was worried. King wanted to pull out. Father Mottet replied, "We took your word for Selma, now take mine for Davenport." So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to Davenport and received the award. He spoke and he inspired. In fact, Dr. King elevated and brought gravitas to this fledgling award, honoring the world's peace heroes. In 1978, Father Mottet and the Campaign for Human Development, CCHD, decided to broaden the Pacem and Terris Award sponsorship to include the Diocese of Davenport, St. Ambrose and St. Augustine College, and Churches United. Since then, the coalition has grown to include the Islamic Center of the Quad Cities, the Catholic Messenger, the Muslim community of the Quad Cities, the Congregation of the Humility of Mary, the Sisters of St. Benedict in Rock Island, and the Sisters of St. Francis in Clinton and Dubuque, and some of them are here. Did I mention that our Pacem and Terris Award can boast 7 Nobel Peace Prize winners? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Mairead Corrigan Maguire, Adolfo Perez Esquivel, Lequilenza, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As a member of the Pacem and Terris Award Committee, I can assure you that we are very proud of our 52 remarkable recipients. Some are world famous, some are not, but all are dedicated to peace and justice. They represent many countries and several faiths. In fact, 2 renowned Buddhist world leaders have recently received the Pacem and Terris Award, the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh in 2016 and His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 2019. Expanding this honor to additional faith traditions is truly in the spirit of Pope John XXIII's embrace of all people of goodwill. I invite you to look closely at the names in your program. They represent an interconnected network of extraordinary people, heroes, if you will, doing the gritty, unglamorous work for peace and justice, which can be exhausting, thankless, even dangerous. To close, I'd like to make the case that these Pacem and Terris Peace and Freedom Award laureates represent a living history of an ideal. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Katie. And we look for the next installation of bios on the website. So thanks for doing that. Really appreciate it. So next, please welcome Kaylee Koos and Madeline Shue. They're going to do a litany of past recipients. Okay, this has become a part of our tradition every year when we honor our past recipients in this way. So here you go.
President John F. Kennedy. John Howard Griffin. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. R. Sargent Shriver. A. Philip Randolph. Reverend James Groppe. Saul Alinsky. Dorothy Day. Harold Hughes. Dom Helder Kamara.
Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Bishop Thomas Gumbleton. Crystal Lee Sutton. Bishop Ernest Unterkaufler. George Kennan. Helen M. Caldecott. Cardinal Joseph Bernardin. Bishop Maurice Dingman. Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Eileen Egan.
Mareed Corrigan McGuire. Maria Julia Hernandez. Cesar Chavez. Daniel Berrigan. Jim Wallace. Bishop Samuel Ruiz. Jim and Shelley Douglas. Helen Prejean. Adolfo Perez Esquivel. Monsignor George Higgins.
Lech Walesa. Dorothy Marie and Gwen Hennessy. Arthur Simon. Don Mosley. Bishop Salim Ghazal. Monsignor Marvin Modit. Hildegard Gossmeyer. Father John Deere. Bishop Alvaro Ramanzini. Kim Bobo.
Jean Vanier. Simone Campbell. Thich Nhat Hanh. Father Gustavo Gutierrez Marino.
Dr. Widad Akri. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Bishop Munib A. Yunnan. And Sister Norma Pimentel.
Amen. Such a powerful witness to our past recipients. It just moves me to see the candles lit and to hear these names and recall all the stories and the witness that this cloud of great role models for us. And as Kent said earlier, this is not something, what they're doing, what they've done, not something we should walk away from here tonight saying, well, they can do that, but we can't, right? But they should inspire us to new heights ourselves. So next, I would like to ask our One Among Us recipients, Ones Among Us, Lisa and Gail, back to the podium, and they are going to introduce our Pachman Terris Award recipients.
Thank you, Dan. Atiya Aftab, Esquire, is an attorney, educator, and activist. She currently maintains her own practice, providing representation to nonprofit corporations. Atiya is also an adjunct professor at Rogalski University, teaching Islamic law and jurisprudence. She is chair of the Center for Islamic Life of Rogalski University, convener of the first full-time Muslim chaplaincy on campus. Atiya is the co-founder and chair emerita of the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom, an international women's interfaith organization. She has been a member of the Islamic Society of Central Jersey's Board of Trustees and Overseers for over 25 years, and was the first woman chair of the board. She co-founded the New Jersey Muslim Lawyers Association and has been its vice president and treasurer. Atiya has spoken at numerous forums on topics related to Islam, including academic institutions, conferences, police training centers, places of worship, universities, hospitals, community forums, conventions, and newsprint, social media, and television and radio addresses.
And our other recipient, Sheryl Olitzky, is the founding executive director and co-founder of the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom. In just a few years under Sheryl's leadership, the Sisterhood grew into a movement. I want to be a movement. Into a movement with members throughout the United States, Canada, and Berlin. Sheryl combined her strong leadership, relationship building, and organizational skills with her passion to rid the world of hate in starting this organization. Prior to becoming the executive director of the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom, Sheryl was a marketing executive. Sheryl is frequently sought after presenter and can be found teaching high school and university students around the world about interfaith relationship building, presenting to women about the power of interfaith dialogue and engagement, visiting the chapters of the Sisterhood located around the country or Canada, or leading Building Bridges trips to locations of significant interest to Muslims and Jews. She is a contributor to the Huffington Post, Interfaith Observer, Religious News Service, and The Forward. Sheryl was a nominated change maker in the 2016 White House Summit on the United States of Women. My apologies. Sheryl was a recipient of the 2021 Making a Difference Honoree Award from the Russell Berry Foundation. She has been honored as Women Who Do by Hadassah, Raritan Valley. Sheryl is also a recipient of the 2019 Jefferson Award for Public Service from the New Jersey Governor. Sheryl is one of the proud winners on behalf of the Sisterhood of the 2019 UN BMW Intercultural Innovations Award and the EVZ Foundation KIGA Award for the Jewish-Muslim Solidarity. Sheryl is a board member of the Muslim-Jewish Advisory Council and the Jewish-Muslim Alliance. Sheryl is joined this evening by her husband, Rabbi Emerita, Kerry Olitzky.
Yes. All right, thanks, Gail, and thanks, Lisa. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. I'd like to invite Atiya and Sheryl, along with Bishop Tom Zinkula, to join me here at the podium for the presentation of the 2023 Pacem Terris Award.
So on the award reads, the 2023 Pacem Terris Peace and Freedom Award is presented to Atiya Aftab and Sheryl Olitzky by Bishop Thomas R. Zinkula of the Diocese of Davenport and the Pacem Terris Coalition of the Quad Cities in light of your lifelong commitment to peace and justice. The coalition recognizes your vision and commitment to creating relationships based on shared values between Muslim and Jewish women. These relationships, formalized in the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom, enables so many to engage in social justice action with the clear aim to end the acts of hate for all human beings. It is obvious from your words and deeds that you are women deeply rooted in the spirit of peace. Atiya and Sheryl, you both truly embody the words of Pope John the 23rd as a spark of light, a center of love, a vivifying leaven to your sisters and brothers around the world. Given on the 13th day of September in Davenport, Iowa.
Can you hear me okay? If I have it here, then I could turn the pages. And I'm only using pages because I was given a time limit. For those of you that heard me earlier, if I don't go with the pages, I'll go too long. I stand before you as the co-founder of the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom with my sister, Atiya, and as the founding executive director of the Sisterhood. We represent thousands of women around North America and Berlin, aged 13 to 90, whose faith motivates them to make this a better world. A better world based on respect for diversity, a world full of harmony, and a world surrounded by peace. These women believe in B'Tselem Elohim, that is, we are all created in God's image. White nationalism is a disease that is spreading hate and fear. However, the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom is proof that this infection can be stopped. Instead of running away in fear and recoiling in fear, we run to each other and we embrace what makes us the same. We embrace what we celebrate. And what do we celebrate? We celebrate that we are unique from one another. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this award, for this recognition. And it is an honor to be standing on the shoulders of all the peacemakers who came before us. Well, I would love to thank all of you. I know there's not time. So thank you to everyone involved and for all your hard work. Mabruk and Mazel Tov to Lisa and to Gail. Storytelling is one of the most effective ways to learn about one another. Tonight, I share with you my story about what motivated me to envision a world where Muslim and Jewish women can come together. My life changed when I led a group to Poland. I innocently asked our local guide, "Excuse me, but why don't I see any diversity amongst the Polish people that are here?" He did not hesitate, and he said, "Poland is for the Poles." And when I pressed further, he replied, "You won't see any Muslims here because they are not welcome." As I walked through Auschwitz, one of the worst places on earth that exemplifies the outcome of hatred for one another, I had a calling. I knew I had to do my part to make sure that what happened during the Shoah would never again happen to any people. The Nazis wanted to eradicate all Jews. Had more people stood up to their hate, more than 6 million Jews and more than 1 million others would not have been killed. My Polish experience occurred in a post-9/11 era when hate toward Muslims was growing by the day. At that time, I could not imagine the level of hate that surrounds Jews today. too reminiscent of the late 30s and the 40s. In that moment in Poland, I was being called to change the course of hate, specifically toward Muslims. Now, how did I know what to do and that it would work? I interviewed anyone I could identify who was involved in relevant interfaith work. I took a deep dive into organizations that recognize the importance of interfaith work. And all my research led me to one conclusion. If I wanted to foster deep relationships, that work needed to be focused on dialogue, with a special emphasis on compassionate listening. I then reached out to the local imam in Central Jersey, my home community, who introduced me to Atiya Aftab. She became my partner in founding and developing the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom. We had intended only to start with a small group of 12 women, half Muslim and half Jewish. We'd get together to meet, to learn about one another, to build intense relationships, and to change the negative perceptions that were so prevalent in both our groups. But soon after, other women around the country and around the world started hearing about what we were doing and asked them to help us do this for their communities. The two of us put together a framework, we pilot tested program expansion, and eventually created an organization that spans North America and part of Europe. When we started this little group of 12 women, we had no idea that we would quickly grow into an organization and then a movement. The Sisterhood is about thousands of women who are committed to a new possibility of coexistence. These are women who believe they are able to get out of their comfort zone. They are able to take a risk for a bigger dream. Our sacred texts demand us to do the work of the sisterhood. In the Quran 49:13, God teaches us that, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female to make you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other. Similarly, we learn from the Torah, rendered in a gendered translation, regarding the stranger that lives among you, she should be to you as the native. You should love her as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am Adonai, your God. To emphasize the importance of loving your stranger, it is the one commandment that is mentioned more than any other commandment in the Torah, 36 times. It's not enough for us to have direction from our sacred text. We also needed to identify and test a theory of change. The theory of change we proved effective is called contact effects and extended contact effects. The theory, originally developed by social psychologist Gordon Allport, posits that interpersonal contact is one of the most effective ways to overcome prejudice amongst groups that are different. As we forged our relationships between each other and between hundreds and hundreds of women, we eliminated any ignorance as we were building trust and respect. As we learn more about each other, we learn more about ourselves. And importantly, and this is the most important part about contact effects, the strength of the relationship that we have is how we view each other's communities. This is contact effects. Extended contact effects, that's what we're doing right now. For you to hear about Muslim and Jewish women in the sisterhood and our work to make this a better world, there's potential for you, the listeners, to also be changed. Any negative perceptions, stereotypes, and attitudes can be mitigated just by you hearing about Muslim and Jewish women coming together to change the world. Atiya and I believe, just as our respective traditions teach, that if we could change one person, we can change the world. Research on the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom has demonstrated that on average, every sister in the sisterhood tells 40 others and positively impacts on 40 others who are not in the sisterhood. That is quite an impact. In imagining the sisterhood, we made the decision to only include those who identified as female and who practiced either Islam or Judaism. We are women of faith motivated by the belief that in order to improve our faith communities, we have to begin by improving ourselves. These relationships create such a strong bond with a commitment to protect one another and our communities from hate. To quote my husband, Rabbi Sheryl Olitzky, women are from Genesis. Women navigate the world through relationships, and building the relationships was what we had to do. In the sisterhood, we commit to stand up for one another, to educate one another about our faith and our cultural practices, and to engage in social justice work. How do we do this? We do this with over 150 chapters of adult women. We do this with an additional 10 teenage girl chapters. In addition, hundreds of women attend regular online educational sessions, an annual conference, and embark on a yearly journey that takes us to locations throughout the world that reflect the values we hold dear. And it is so special tonight to have two sisters from the Quad Cities who just recently traveled with the sisterhood. For the Jewish community, this is a time of year called the Yamim Norim, the off-field days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This is the period when we are instructed to reflect on where we have been these past 12 months and how we could change to be better in the year ahead. We take a hard look at ourselves, we commit to right what we see as wrong, and then we work to do this in our communities and in the world at large. At the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom, we envision a world where Muslims and Jews can live without hate. In a world where freedom, equality, and social justice are within the reach for all. May this be a new year of renewal, of well-being, and of peace for each one of us, for our families, and for our communities. And may none of our children, none of our grandchildren, and none of those yet to come live in fear to practice their own faith. Amen. Amen.
I always go second to follow that. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Salam shalom. Over 50, so I need the glasses. My father grew up as a religious minority, a Muslim in a majority Hindu India. And my mother grew up as a religious minority, a Catholic in a majority Anglican England. They married and lived around the world. When they emigrated to the United States with my older brother and me, they moved to the Midwest and began raising Muslim kids in a majority Christian America. My younger brother was born in Illinois, and I'm happy to report that about 5 years of my life were spent in Illinois. Therefore, I'm somewhat of a Midwestern girl, and I'm really thrilled to be here in Iowa today. It's humbling, it's overwhelming to accept this award for the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom and its achievements in peace and justice in America and around the world. I'm grateful to be a founder of this organization and blessed to continue to be part of the movement, right? We don't call it an organization, it's a movement. Thank you for recognizing this. It demonstrates that those of faith, those who commit to religion, are part of the solution. Too many times, religion is blamed for causing division and hate and violence, but it's people who cause division and hate and violence. Tyrants and oppressors who cloak evil in the language of religion in the name of God. I reject that. Sheryl and I are women of faith. Sheryl and I recognize that true faith is grounded on love and understanding and peace and justice through dialogue and not demagoguery. And this is not idealistic. It's real. It's not a fantasy. It's tangible. And it begins with the belief and the premise that I believe in, which is a Quranic principle. Sheryl mentioned it, that God created humanity in nations and tribes so that we may know one another and not despise one another. So God intentionally created us different. And this makes sense. No one wants the crayon box, right, with the same color. No one wants the same color crayon. And it makes no sense that the red crayon would hate the blue one. So therefore, it's imperative for us not to fear the other, not to demonize the other, but simply to get to know one another. This is the foundation of the sisterhood, to create brave spaces, to ask each other frank questions, difficult questions, questions that stem from curiosity and not contempt, and to engage in heart-to-heart dialogue. And we intentionally set this foundation of faith, but we are not naive. We are not naive to recognize that when Jews and Muslims are in the same room, they may want to venture into contemporary geopolitics and debate about Palestine and Israel. Discussion on this tough, sensitive, and painful situation we knew could not constructively take place until the foundations of trust and understanding were established, and even until a facilitated, guided program could be created. So what did we do? We focused on the 1,400-plus year history between Jews and Muslims, and we parked Palestine and Israel until we were ready. We broke down stereotypes and myths between sisters about Muslims and Jews. Muslims are not mandated to kill Jews. Muslims are not all Arab. In fact, the majority are South Asian American and African American. We learned that we shared a common religious history. We learned that in America, those who hate Jews also hate Muslims. The American political environment shaped our growth as an organization and our focus. The Muslim ban happened, and our Jewish sisters were speaking up for us. The Tree of Life massacre happened, and we stood up for the Jewish community. It was clear not only do we need to know one another, but we need to stand up for one another. And this illuminated another Quranic principle called hisba, that Muslims must enjoin the good and prevent the evil. So prevent bad deeds and evil actions from do good deeds, good actions, and prevent bad deeds and evil actions from taking place. But how do we do this? Our Prophet Muhammad advised that when a Muslim learns of an evil, they should do something to change it. With your hand, meaning action, do something, take action. With your tongue, meaning speak out. Or at least the third option is at least hate it with your heart, but that's considered the weakest form of faith. And we took all of that very seriously at the Sisterhood. We formed chapters all over the country and even outside of the United States. We hosted an annual conference, which was a day of learning with wonderful speakers, discussions that took place that were very vibrant, and we organized an annual Building Bridges trip, which were transformative. In 2016, our first trip was to Bosnia and Albania, where we met with the mothers of Srebrenica, let's pronounce that wrong, Muslim women whose husbands and children were the victims of genocide. We met with the Jewish leaders in Sarajevo. We met with Muslim families in Albania whose parents had given safe haven to Jews fleeing from the Holocaust. Muslims who saved Jews. Wow, that's just really not the narrative that most of us were familiar with. In 2017, we traveled to the Muslim majority country of Azerbaijan and experienced a country that was formerly part of the Persian Empire, formerly part of the Soviet Union, and had Jewish communities that lived side by side with Muslims for hundreds of years. We celebrated the Jewish holiday of Purim in an Orthodox synagogue in Baku. Who could have imagined that? Due to the shifting political environment, however, in 2018, we shifted course, and we embarked on a domestic civil rights trip. Hate was rising in America, and our objective of fighting hate was becoming the natural next step after building bridges of understanding. During this trip, we began discussing and reflecting on issues of justice, fairness, institutional oppression. The issue of Israel and Palestine started creeping in. Hate in Europe at this time was also rising, including the resentment of migrants and refugees. So in 2019, we traveled to Europe, first to Germany, and we met with Muslim refugees and migrants, and then to Poland, to witness the unspeakable. When human beings created institutions to systematically kill other human beings. We visited Auschwitz. And there were no words. We prayed together, we shed tears together, Muslim and Jewish women holding hands praying together. In January 2020, we set off to Arizona. It was our trip to the Mexican border to learn and understand the treatment of refugees and immigrants and migrants, people who have been vilified in the political arena. We went through checkpoints in Arizona. We stood in front of a massive wall on the US-Mexican border. We learned about a young Mexican boy who was shot to death by a US border guard as he tried to scale the wall into America, into the United States. We were all affected. It became clear that day that we could no longer not talk about Palestine and Israel, and those checkpoints, and that wall. We quickly organized a multi-day Sisterhood board retreat with facilitators from Combatants for Peace, and we issued I would say, a rather revolutionary statement on Palestine-Israel, ironically on the Day of Love, February 14th, 2020. But what happened after that? The world shut down. And our organization, which is based on in-person relationships and dialogue, suffered just when we wanted to embark on this sensitive path. And it was difficult. Violence in Gaza and in Jerusalem erupted, and we scrambled. In January 2022, we hosted a virtual Palestine-Israel trip via Zoom. We are still in the learning process, and some relationships have faltered, and others have strengthened. In February of this year, just a few months ago, we traveled to Muslim-majority Morocco, and those in Morocco affected by the earthquake are, of course, in our prayers. We learned about the deep Jewish connections and history in Morocco, and in fact, one of our guides was an Israeli Jew whose family had emigrated to Israel from Morocco. And we asked tough questions and reflected on tough issues. Why did so much of the Jewish community leave Morocco? As Arabs, how were they treated in Israel? What were the challenges of Jews today of Jews in Morocco today? The power of travel is amazing. That immersion forces us into dialogue. But whether our sisters have traveled with us or participated in our programs or conferences or are members of our chapters, narratives and conversations and the learning have been life-changing. They make us see each other as humans, not just labels. We know that the sisterhood has changed lives, and we know that our common teaching from the Old Testament and the Quran is true. To save one life is to save the world. But what does that mean? What does all of that mean? It means that our job, our responsibility is to just take a step. Just take one step at a time, one good deed at a time, and that makes a world of change. We do our part, and God takes care of the rest. The result is not in our hands, but the journey towards peace, the journey towards justice, the journey towards change is what's in our hands. So everyone should dream, but make a plan and take a step. And do not be overwhelmed by the depth of the challenge, because it's messy. My first step on this journey is when I said yes to Sheryl, and when she extended her hand to me to join her on this path to peace. And I am grateful to her. Our friendship, our love is embodied in the sisterhood, and that demonstrates that interfaith relationships do have the power to transform. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Wow. Sheryl, Atiya, thanks for your words. Thanks for your wisdom. Thanks for your wisdom. Thanks for your witness. And thanks for reminding us that, there's this common message in the Torah, in the Quran, in the New Testament about loving the immigrant and about welcoming the stranger. I think that's just something we all needed to hear tonight. And also, I just maybe a takeaway for each and every one of us in this room, just to follow this example and find one person who is culturally, ethnically, religiously different than we are, and try to build a relationship there. Try to build a friendship. I'm reminded of the words of Thomas Merton, that in the end, it's relationships that'll save us. It's the relationships that we build with each other, especially when they're built across the divisions that you're building them in. So thank you so much for that witness. So before we invite the Imam for our closing prayer, we're going to have a musical interlude by Cantor Gail Karp and Colin Evers.
In your program was an insert that had 3 languages on it. It's a song with three verses. The first verse Arabic, second verse will be Hebrew, and I hope by the time you've heard it 2 times, you'll be able to sing along with us on the third verse, which is English. Please join us. Sayyati salamu alayna, Sayyati salamu alayna, Sayyati salamu alayna wa al-jamia. Salam alayna wa ala kulli alam. Shalom. Salam. Salam alayna wa ala kulli alam. Shalom. Salam. Oh Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Oh Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Oh Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Oh Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Oh Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Peace will still come upon us. Peace will still come upon us. Peace will still come upon us and everyone. Peace will still come upon us. Peace will still come upon us. Peace will still come upon us and the whole world. Peace. Peace upon us, the whole world. Peace, peace, peace. Be upon us and the whole world. Peace, peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. And now I'd like to invite my new friend. We just had dinner tonight. The Imam from the Islamic Center of the Quad Cities, Bashir Jahesh. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Peace be with you. Dear attendees, as we conclude this ceremony, let us gather our hearts in reflection and supplications. As God Almighty said in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O mankind, indeed we have created you from a male and female, and made you tribes and nations, that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. And God said in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 1, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. O mankind, fear your Lord and love him, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah, through whom you ask one another, and the wombs that bore you. Indeed, Allah is ever an observer over you. These verses remind us of the universal bond that connects all of us as children of Adam. As the Prophet Muhammad said in his last sermon, O mankind, all of you are from one single person. All of you from Adam, and Adam was created from dirt. There's no preference of white over black, or an Arab over a non-Arab. The Prophet Muhammad said, all people spread peace. That's his first talk when he migrated from Mecca to Medina. He escaped from torture of Quraysh in Mecca, and he gave this speech. All people spread peace. أفشوا السلام, and feed the needy. وأطعموا الطعام, and pray at night. صلوا بالليل والناس نيام تدخلوا الجنة بسلام. Pray at night while people are snoring and sleeping, so you will enter paradise peacefully. He taught us to respect our neighbors, honor our guests, and speak words of goodness. Let us pray that these teachings continue to inspire us. Let us pray that this ceremony, this award ceremony as well, inspire us in our pursuit of peace and unity. May Salam, Shalom, peace prevail in our hearts and actions. Lastly, let's remember one of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad when he said, emphasizing on kindness and courtesy. He said, whoever believes in Allah, God the Almighty, and the last day of judgment should not harm his neighbor. And whoever believes in Allah and the last day should honor his guest. And whoever believes in Allah and the last day should speak good of or remain silent. قُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ اصْمُتْ. Say goodness or keep it silent. May these values guide us as we leave this ceremony, and may we continue to work together for a more peaceful and harmonious world. Thank you all for being part of this wonderful celebration of peace and unity. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Amen. So go forth in peace, in salam and shalom.